Hello, the purpose of this video is to help get you started on the homework. We will be using Eclipse EMF and a tool called Papyrus to actually create UML diagrams with OCL, or I guess a UML diagram with OCL constraints. And so the first step to doing this, since we'll be using Eclipse EMF, is to go to the Eclipse website. And so you can see this is where you wind up if you go to eclipse.org. And what you want to do then is you want to click on Download. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to not download the newest version of Eclipse because some of the modeling tools that we'll be using have not been updated to be as easily installed through the newest version of Eclipse as was possible with the prior version of Eclipse. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that prior version, and we won't really see a big difference in the tools, but that'll just make it easier to get everything installed. So the prior version was Eclipse Kepler, and you'll see it down here on the right where it says more downloads. And so we can go ahead and click there, and this will then take us to the Eclipse Kepler page, and we see we have this downloads link here. So let's go ahead and click on that, and these are the various downloads then for Kepler. And what we want to do is we want to scroll down to Eclipse modeling tools. So you see that here, and you'll see different versions, and so you just want to download whichever version is appropriate for your platform. If you're running 32-bit Windows, of course you want the 32-bit Windows option. 64-bit Windows, you would want that. For the Mac, either 32 or 64-bit, and the same with Linux. We will go ahead and do 64-bit Mac on here because I'm running a Mac, but you would do whatever is appropriate for whatever platform you're running. And so you'll see it has the download here of what it'll actually want to download onto your hard drive, and then it picks a location that it detects as being somewhat close to you, where you can actually download it from. So we can click on that, and then it will start the download, and it will also ask you for money. So I'll leave it up to you as to whether you want to donate to Eclipse or not. If you feel like being a best friend of Eclipse, it's $100, which seems a bit much to me, but I guess if you use Eclipse a lot, that may be not such a bad thing. And it will take a while to download. Here on the ECU campus, it's not too bad because we have a good connection, but if you were someplace else, or maybe an especially busy time of day on the network, this could be slower. So, okay, so it's almost there. Okay, 91. Okay, great. And so let me go ahead and show this in the Finder, and we have a lot of different things laying around in my downloads here. Let me go ahead and drag this over because that's what I just downloaded, and so we can work with it just directly on the desktop. And yeah, let me close that. Okay, so here we have then Eclipse, and it's just one nice thing about Eclipse is all you really have to do is unzip it, and you can just run it. And so we'll go ahead and just unzip it here on the Mac. This is just to open with Archive utility, but maybe this is either using the Windows unzip program or something like 7-zip or WinZip. Again, depending on your platform. If you're running Linux, then you're probably just doing this from the command line. When you do this, you get a folder called Eclipse, and it's fine to just leave it with the name Eclipse, but if you have different versions of Eclipse that you're using, then you may want to give this a more descriptive name just to make it clearer which version this is. But like I said, we'll just leave this as Eclipse. And then you open it, and you see the executable in here along with some other files. So we can just run the executable directly, and it says it's an application downloaded from the internet. Do we want to open it? So we'll say OK. And now we see this thing saying Eclipse Kepler. So this is version 4.3 of Eclipse. It asks us where it wants to put the workspace. The workspace is basically where Eclipse keeps track of the various files that you're working on. And so in my case, I'm just going to say I want it on my desktop and in a folder called Workspace. And you can put it wherever is convenient to you, so you don't need to put it there. But I'll just go ahead and do that, and then we'll see the folder appear. Not immediately because it doesn't seem to refresh immediately, but it's actually on the desktop now. Okay, so when you first launch it, you'll get something that looks like this, and yeah, it's not gonna Not sure why it doesn't show it right away. Let me move that down there. Okay, and so what you need to do then is just click here, go to Workbench, and you get this view. And essentially at this point we don't really have anything in here yet. This has whatever modeling tools come with Eclipse EMF, so we have basic EMF tools, but we don't have any kind of UML editor really at this point. So what we want to do is we want to install one called Papyrus, and that is available if we go to the Help menu and then Install Modeling Components. You'll see it here, and you'll see a variety of different modeling components that are supported. Some of these you may have looked at already if you're doing a project that uses EMF or GMF. Right, some of these you may not have played with. And so really what we will do here is we'll install Papyrus because we'll be using that, and we'll also go ahead and install the OCL tools since we'll be doing some work with OCL. And then we don't need anything else in here, but you see, for instance, Modisco is here. This is one we mentioned in class, and you also see that there's one called ATL up here, and Acelio, and we'll actually be using those later in class, but we don't need to install them now. Okay, so let's go ahead and click Finish, and again we selected two things. We selected Papyrus and we selected OCL tools. And so now what will happen is Eclipse will go ahead and download these and install them for you into your Eclipse installation, basically into the folder that's here on your desktop. You'll get a window that looks like this, and this is just verifying that we want to install these things. If Eclipse figured out we needed something else as well as part of this, it would have shown it here. So we can click Next, and of course we get install details, and if you want you can sort of open up and you can see there's lots of different pieces to this. Click Next again, and this is a license agreement, which, I mean, you can read it, and I guess you'd probably be one of the few people that does. Most people just kind of click through these. It's just the standard Eclipse license agreement. It's open source software, so we'll just accept the terms of the agreement and click Finish, and then it'll actually do the real download. So the first thing it was doing was downloading metadata and checking dependencies to make sure that it wasn't going to install something and in essence break our install by not installing other pieces that it needed. Okay, so this isn't the most exciting thing in the world. It'll take a minute or two to do it, and then once it's installed everything, we will need to go ahead and restart Eclipse. So I'm going to pause while this finishes, and then I'll start again once it has everything downloaded. Okay, we're back, and you can see now things are downloaded, and we need to restart Eclipse. So just go ahead and say yes, and it will go ahead and close it and reopen it. And you'll get, again, this message asking you if you want, where you want to put the workspace. I tend to not check this. If you know you're always going to want to have the workspace in the same spot, you can go ahead and check this, and then you won't have to keep clicking OK every time you start. But I'll just go ahead and leave that. We'll go ahead and launch it again. And again, this takes a minute. Okay, so now we have, again, this workspace screen, and you see we have something that it looks in some sense similar as the sort of landing pad that we had before, but you see we have this option to say install different Papyrus components, start a project, things like this, right? So let's click here again to go back to our workspace like we were before, and I'll go ahead and make that bigger. And we see we also got a new menu, install Papyrus additional components, and we don't actually need any of these, but if you were doing certain things in UML, like you were doing real-time or embedded systems, you may want to install the Marte version here. If you're doing other things or want different editors, right, you can explore these different options. We don't need any of these for now, so we'll go ahead and just leave them out. Okay, so what we have at this point is, again, this sort of empty container. We have stuff we need in order to do things, but we don't actually have any kind of project going yet. So what we can do is we can either right click and go to New, or File, New, and we can start a new project. You see there isn't a Papyrus option, so if we go to Other and just start typing Papyrus, we can create a new Papyrus project. And so we will go ahead and do that, and we will call this Ice Cream Store because that is what we will be modeling, an ice cream store. and then we have an option, and in this case we just want to pick UML. Click Next, and we can go ahead and create a new model, and in this case it is a class diagram. Sorry for the quick pause. I'm going to change the name of this. I have some additional material that I've already worked up for this, of course, and I just want to make sure everything is consistent, so I'm going to change this to store class model. The important thing is here we're saying we want a UML class diagram, and so what we're going to do is we're going to be modeling the classes that make up our ice cream store and adding OCL constraints to those. And then we have this option here which says you can load a template, a UML model with basic primitive types. For some reason this is not the default. I think it should be a default. And if you don't check this, you're going to have some weird things happen in your diagrams. What this brings in is it brings in a lot of what we would think of as being basic types, either in something like Java or in something like OCL, which you'll see as you go through that OCL tutorial video. We have things like Booleans, numbers, and right, those will not be brought into the model if we do not check this. And the only types we'll have is any types that we create. So we'll have things like our own classes. So we want to go ahead and check those, and then we can check Finish. And it will take a moment. And what we have now is we have this model sort of sitting here in the middle with this palette with these different things we can drag onto it. The model itself doesn't have anything on it yet. And then we have some things over here we don't need. Now one thing you'll notice if you look up here in the right hand corner is there's this little thing here that says Java, and if you're familiar with Eclipse, that is the perspective that we're in. And one nice thing is that if we go to open perspective, there is an actual Papyrus perspective. We can click on that, and what happens then is Eclipse will rearrange things so that we see information specific to the model we're working at, and you can see already there's some differences. The stuff that was on the right hand edge is gone. Now over here we have this Project Explorer, and this has our model, and then we have down here this Model Explorer, and again this has our model, and we have this store class model diagram that's in here, and we import the UML primitive types. And then you see we have this thing with properties down here, and as we start adding information into the model, as we actually start adding model elements in, this will have additional information in it, so specific to the type of model element that you're adding. So let me go ahead and wrap up there. This at least gets you to the point where you can start working on the homework. You can start doing things like adding classes and associations. I do have a couple of videos related to this as well that I'll go ahead and post soon. Please take a look to try to get to at least this point, and take a look at the homework handout. Start thinking about how you'll build this. Also go and, if you haven't looked at chapter 6 and 7 yet in the book, which talk about UML and domain-specific languages, and if you haven't watched the OCL tutorial yet, please go ahead and do that. Now one more thing I will say about this, let me go ahead and exit Eclipse, and so I'll go ahead and close it. And now, for some reason my Mac desktop isn't refreshing, which is kind of annoying. So let me just go through here. I'll go to desktop, and my workspace still isn't appearing there. It really should. Hold on a moment. Okay, so for some reason I had to actually go to the command line and open it from there. I have no idea why. But the folder was there, it just wasn't showing up. So you have this workspace folder, and this is actually where the files that you're creating are going. And one thing I will say is I haven't had any problems with Papyrus, crashing, corrupting the model, anything like that. But it is a piece of research software. You're going to want to be careful, since you don't want to be working on your homework and then suddenly something gets broken and you can't go back. And it's just good practice anyway. So what I would do is I would create, either take advantage of the fact that this is just files, right, and just make backups of this directory occasionally, or use something like, a Git repository, Subversion, some kind of source control system in order to actually create different versions of this, where if you needed to, you could go back, right? Again, these are just files that are stored here, and so you can always step back to an earlier point in time, and that way if you make some mistake in your model, or something goes wrong with the tool, you won't be, right, it won't be all is lost. You'll still be able to go ahead and step back to an earlier point in time and recover. Of course, if you have any questions about this, you have any problems with the setup, please let me know, and I will let you know when additional information is available. Please start taking a look at this and make sure you're set up properly for the current homework. Thanks.